Claiborne and me, COP. You, me, and Claiborne, coffee and philosophy.
Hola, buenos dias, konnichiwa, good day. I don't know, whatever the hell's going on. I'm just,
Mhm.
down here trying to not get like completely like destroyed by a hurricane.
Okay, so you got like the crazies happening down there, do you?
Oh yeah, it's full on. It's pretty full on. But oh
Yeah,
well,
we don't get those things up down this way. So yeah,
yeah. I mean, but
feeling for you.
like all the stuff on the island already wants to kill you, right? So like things don't have to come there to kill you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. And then like you guys are like surrounded by more death machines.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
You just go get in the water and like a crocodile or a fucking shark or one of those fucking blue ring motherfuckers.
Octopus. Yeah, yeah. We got jellyfish that would do hella damage as well. It's just danger everywhere, you know. And even just like the other day, I was telling you, like I went to put my shoe on, and yeah, if you're an Aussie, you really should be checking your shoes before you put them on. Even if you don't leave your shoes outside, like some people do, but you're supposed to check inside your shoes. So you tap them out, tap it in, and tapped out a little funnel web. That was nice. I was looking at that, and I'm like, yeah, I could have died just now. Awesome, Australia.
Well, what if you like go to stick your foot in your shoe, but like there's like a huntsman spider?
Nah, huntsmen are fine. They look like nasty creatures, but they're actually majestic beasts galloping around your house. Not crawling, galloping. Like that's how they move. You have to really see them in flight, if you will, to appreciate the huntsman.
And I can't believe this. Qua made Moon run away. I thought we had a new one. We were gonna get some new blood in here, Cope.
A new sacrifice.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll just have a very intimate show. We've got Qua here. We've got PZ. We've got Nine. We've got Gabe. And I'm pretty sure we have an unconscious Eileen, but like that's fine too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's all good.
Yeah, who needs to be awake for this show?
That's right. As long as we get the ratings, it's all that matters, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just get the bodies in here. We don't care where they come from.
Oh, Gabe, did the group chat orgy wear you out? Like that was a pretty wild one earlier.
What'd you
Oh,
what'd you cover in that? What was the group chat orgy about? What I miss?
that's Bonehead and um, I don't know, Jeremiah or whatever the hell his name is. Yeah, they like the two old trucker dudes. They like to get on and be dirty old truckers. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think New Girl is supposed to be their lot lizard. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure like Eileen actually like just downed a whole bottle of wine and passed out. Nine.
The Jesus juice makes you sleepy.
Yep. So that's like our only way to get people here. We have to offend them. Nine. See, like to shit. I don't know. Like let's see. Who else can we offend and bring back? Where's Woo? Somebody offend Woo. Yeah, tell Normock we're talking about Jesus or something. Oh, tell Normock that Cope said Sky Daddy. That'll do it. Oh well, yeah. So I don't know. What you thinking with crypto land this week, Cope?
Well, as I was saying last week, a bit of a pullback on Bitcoin would be healthy, and it has done so, even if it's kind of a little bit sideways. But it's still interesting as far as I'm concerned. It's playing out that role. I'll just chuck a chart up for y'all to have a look at here. And yeah, you can see it's hit that green zone that I had there as a bit of resistance. Like once we push through this, like my mark is once we get over 54, we're back in business. As in like, yeah, green lights, everything's going good. Up until this point here, where we are right now, it's kind of like indecision zone. Like it seems like the people don't know whether they want to, push it up for a nice rally, or whether they're going to let it go and let it come back down. For maybe a retest of that breakout zone. So it's kind of like question marks at the moment. But it is a lot healthier than what it was. We're just waiting for a decision here, and there's not really a lot to be done as far as like as far as I'm concerned. There's not a lot to be done here, and this is not financial advice, patient zero. Just to let you know. We want to see which way we start swinging and make decisions based on that. So if you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. You're just waiting to see what happens as far as I'm concerned.
Azaria is here. I'm pretty sure Azaria got like completely rich off Splinterlands and just like doesn't care. I think everybody with Splinterlands cards is just like so rich right now. They're like, fuck it.
Well, except for me, I got $130 worth of them. So
Yeah,
according to Ron, I haven't checked myself. It is what it is. Like I said, at the end of the day, I wasn't sort of like playing the game or anything like that. It's just something that it happened along the way for whatever reason. And it was like, yeah, cool, man, like no problems. And it is what it is. I didn't have them before; they cost me nothing. It's like great, but it goes to show how these things can evolve from being a little something something, a couple of cents here, dollar there, to being worth what they are now, which is a crap ton of money, particularly if you've got packs that haven't been opened and that kind of thing. So great, good job. This is the evolution of what we're building here, right?
Word. Yeah, and I'm at the wrap up point with the old job, so like hopefully I'll have more time to be involved around Hive more, and I don't know. I haven't been doing any writing for a while, but I would like to do some more writing again. I think I don't know. Maybe I'll put a book together one of these days, Cope, and I'll write a book about the human condition.
How dare you taking my subject matter is offensive to my people? I'm offended. Get work, sir. Get work.
Holy
But
shit, we got aliens here now too.
aliens have landed. What shall we do? Take them to our leader. Who is our leader? Your leader's Biden. Good luck to you.
I thought they were supposed to take. I thought they were supposed to take us to their leader.
It depends on whether you believe in the Anunnaki and the lizard people living underground and all that kind of shit. Because that's the other way. But the way that it's supposed to go, as far as the government has told us and what we should believe, because the government tells us the truth all the time, is that when they land here, they're going to want to come and destroy us first, but they will want to meet with our current leaders. For you guys, Biden. So it is what it is.
Somebody better wake him up.
Pull a string on the back and make sure he says the right thing.
Really? Like, that motherfucker really fell asleep the other day. Fuck, what was that? Like, I think they were doing like some kind of like he was meeting with like some foreign leader or some shit. This motherfucker like straight up nods out sitting in the chair. I'm just like, yeah,
Well,
it's so
like, is
absurd
it a
at this point,
surprise?
man. Like,
Is it a
it's just
surprise?
it's so absurd. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It's absurd. Like
I
at
don't.
some point, like doesn't somebody have to step in and be like, okay, guys, like seriously though.
Well, look, the thing is, like, you're putting people in these positions, right? And let's be real. By the time they get to that role, generally speaking, they're in the latter years of their lives, and looking at my grandfather and that kind of thing. Yeah, when you get to those kind of age, you need to take naps all the time. Like, are we really doing this? We're putting these people in charge, and they have to, they start losing their minds a bit. And we can see that with your current president at the moment. They're not really there. They're not really switched on. They need to have naps to recharge and that kind of thing. Like, these are the people that we're putting in charge. We're choosing. We're voting to put these people. Some people are voting to put these people in charge. It's like, really? Like, this is what we're choosing to do, and we expect things to get done, things to get better. No, that's not how it. But hey, that's they want to play, and if we're going to play it, this is how it's going to turn out.
Word. And shit. Looks like the internet might already be getting dicey. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. If it starts like dropping out and shit, you guys are gonna have to tell me. Keep in mind, it's basically fucking Armageddon going on down here, and yeah. So I'm gonna try to push through it and get this one under the belt anyway. But yeah. So just like forewarning, there may not be a show next week. It's all gonna depend. Like things are up in the air. In the past, like these things have managed to like knock out most infrastructure for like weeks at a time, shit like that. We'll just have to see how it goes, but kind of play it by ear for now.
Hmm.
Yeah. So other than that, just wrapping up shit with the old job, going back into crypto full time, and trying to get some freedom. Freedom,
Hmm.
Cope.
Yeah. And yeah, look, the choppiness. I'm not hearing any choppiness on my end, so um, pretty clear for me. But I did see Gabe's was saying that I was chopping up for him, so maybe me going to you and then you going out to the people is getting chopped up along the way there. So apologies for that, but it is what it is. But yeah, back to the Hive thing. I'll check up a Hive chart. You can have a rubber neck of that. Because have you been investing further in Hive and that kind of thing?
Actually, so Wax did like super good. Like got a really nice solid pump going to getting that Binance listing. So I started like moving a bit of that over into Hive. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm like I got most of what I wanted, like when it was super cheap, and like I've just been kind of like sitting on it. I would still say like my average cost is probably somewhere below 20 cents. So, like I'm good. Adding on right now, it could go either way. You know what I'm saying? So like I would rather just keep my DCA low and wait and see where it goes. But Gabe, our we've had a nice day today, you know. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like so many of the coins are just doing fucking awesome. It's like there's nothing to complain about, in my opinion. Cardano,
Yeah,
Cardano has been like insane. Gotta love that one.
sitting here in it to win it. And hopefully they keep playing out well. But like I said, it's all pretty dependent on what Bitcoin does right now. So that's why I think for a lot of people, they're just waiting to see what happens to make a decision on whether they stay in on things, get out on things, chucking a short along. It really depends on where it moves from here because we are at a decision point as far as I'm concerned. Again, patient zero, not financial advice.
Holy shit, Cope. Okay, Cope. We got fresh blood. Okay, so Moon is here. You have to have a catchphrase for Moon now, right? Like slivers for nine, datters for Normock. What is like your Australian accented word for Moon gonna be?
Well, it's the thing is they pick it for me, right? They hear me talk, right, and they hear the words that I say, the words that are coming out of my mouth, and they say, "Hey, I like the way that you say this," or they make fun of me, which is what happens more often than not. Make fun of me for the way that I say a word like gears for Ron. Ron loves the way I say gears and beers and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, yeah, fine. I'll say it a lot for you and get a giggle out of you. So hopefully at some point there'll be a word that pricks up the little ears, and Moon City will say, well, hey, I like that word, and we'll put it into the agenda for the show.
Okay, so that's your job for tonight, Moon. You have to listen to whenever Cope is using words and find one you like. Usually most people like to pick one that like he says often, so that way like every time he uses the word, he has to be like Dadder Normock. Like he has to address the person that he says it for. It's our thing. But yeah,
Hmm.
so I was talking to Qua and Moon before the show, trying to figure out what the hell we were going to talk about because we never know. And the topic of emotional intimacy came up, and
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, we've talked about like a lot of adjacent topics, but I don't know if we've like talked specifically about that one before. Then again, I can't remember what we talked about from week to week anyway, because I have like zero short-term memory apparently. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be an interesting topic. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure, man. And look, as far as the topics go, what we have covered, what we haven't covered, we do the show often enough and that kind of thing. It's I think it's getting to a point where it's kind of like The Simpsons, where they've covered pretty much anything and everything that happens there. So yeah, anything that happens in the world, they can turn around and say, oh well, The Simpsons did it, like 5 years ago. So, well, yeah, The Simpsons did bloody everything, didn't they? So we could be headed down the same path, Izzy, to at some point covering every subject possible.
Cope, that actually is a good comparison there, because I mean, like, if you remember, like, we did completely predict the whole COVID playbook too, right?
Mm-hmm. 100%.
I mean,
100%.
like, that's textbook Simpsons right there. Like, didn't Simpsons like predict 9/11 and Trump being president and all kind of shit?
Oh, they predicted everything. They've covered everything.
I wonder what our next predictions will be.
Well, it's the thing, we never know when we're doing it. But when it pans out, it's like, oh yeah, look, there you go. That one panned out.
Yeah,
But I
I don't
do
know.
I do think some of them are a bit too far for us to see. I mean, we've predicted, things like way beyond our lifespan. So, unscientific as it is, we will never see whether we actually made the right call on those ones.
We're gonna have to predict when Qua breaks his vow of silence. Yeah, I think that would be a good one. Oh well, okay.
I say never.
Yeah, probably not. Qua will probably die of a Dorito overdose. That's okay. We,
All right.
we, we still love you, Qua. Okay, so let's see. Emotional intimacy. Um, I do think it'd be an interesting topic because, like personally, it's one of the things that like I guess like I really found myself like having to like kind of like learn and work through over the process of like gaining some self awareness and shit like that. And yeah, I mean, it's really interesting if you think about like how many relationships like build, off of that first and then like move into other things. But yeah, I mean, like especially, I don't know, I don't really like to do the label thing anymore. But like I've always, previously kind of like radiated to that label of being fuck. Like now I'm drawing a blank. I just had it. Sapio, right? So like I don't know. There's always been something with like the mental connection for me, right? Like look, like I'll fully admit, and I think lots of guys like people around here know that like I do like butts, but like butts are fine and all, right? But like you have to have like some kind of like substance, you know. And I do think that like forming those connections, like getting to know people and just kind of like diving in there, figure out who people really are, like share yourself, get into the whole mirror aspect. And like I think on some level that exploring other people like that is also a good way to discover things about yourself. And yeah, I mean, it's just weird because like it's almost like you don't even realize when you're doing it, but then like afterwards, it kind of like clicks. I don't know. I mean, like I've had several instances where like I'll find myself like befriending people, and then like next thing you know, it like evolves into something else, right? And I wonder like if on some level like that's what happens with psychologists, right? Like whenever they're trying to do therapy and everything, and you don't want your patients like getting romantically attached to you and things like that, right? But whenever you
Mm.
spend, excessive amounts of time getting, quote unquote, intimate with people, like you do develop those like emotional intimacies, and those bonds just kind of like evolve and grow, right? It's it's not even something you have to like consciously do. It just happens, and I do think that there are people that are really good at emotional manipulation and abuse that will like basically like weaponize the idea of emotional intimacy and like use it in ways that aren't positive. But I do think that it's probably one of the most powerful positive things we can do too. You just have to be conscious of it, and like also be like aware of your own boundaries, things like that. I don't know, what do you think, Cope?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think emotional intimacy, what we're really getting to is the connectivity between people, right? And this spans well beyond, relationships as far as, sexual relationships and that kind of thing. Be it family, friends, and that kind of thing. We have interactions with people, and depending on what level we're willing to move towards as far as our openness and vulnerability and that kind of thing with these people, it creates that emotional connection, which what we're referring to right now as emotional intimacy. And speaking to the point of what you're saying there with the whole psychology side of things, they call it transference. And what happens is there's a person that comes to see a psychologist, and for whatever reason they've got issues with partner, family, whatever it is, and it's something that's difficult for them to deal with. And maybe they've tried to interact with other people in their lives about it, and they've had adverse reactions and these kinds of things. When they come and see a psychologist's role is not to be judgmental and these kinds of things. What they're supposed to do is kind of like listen, reflect, be a soundboard, and let you open up. So for people that are doing that, it may because it's a new sensation for them to be able to express themselves in that way without judgment, to be able to be open, vulnerable with a person. It creates that connection, and you have these feelings that you haven't felt before, and it can also often be confused for things like love and sexual attraction and these kinds of things. And it's not necessarily that that's the case, but it's the person's best way of being able to attach something like to what it is that they're feeling. So it's something that you have to be very aware of as a psychologist, because it happens quite often, and to be able to deal with these kinds of things is something that you're trained for. But anyway, going back to the whole emotional intimacy side of things, we can see this happen in all different types of relationships, and it really comes down to how open you can be with another person, how vulnerable you can be with another person, and them to you as well, to have that connection. And I think that that connection is what we seek beyond, the surface stuff, like you were saying before about, you like your butts and this and that. Like, yeah, look, there's physical things that we're going to be attracted to. That's just like the way that we operate. Animals, because that's all that we are, really, animals. The way that we operate is like this, and that's okay. That's like a part of our build up, our DNA, our biology, that kind of thing. No problems. But the connection that we want, that emotional connection, comes from not these superficial things, but these bonds that we create on that emotional level.
One of the things that I think, like, personally, I'm really curious about, and I don't know, I guess I think it would be fair to say that, like, I kind of, on some level, avoid exploring this side of things too much due to past experiences. But, well, like, one thing that I found is a lot of times, like, that emotional intimacy can, like I was saying, like, it can lead to other things, right? And,
Mhm.
like, one thing that I had to really do over the last year or so is I had to start considering, like, at what point does something branch off from, just like, friendly connection, emotional intimacy, like sharing, helping people, like work through shit, whatever. Like, at what point does that branch off and turn into something else, right? Because, like, especially if you're, interacting with people in relationships, for instance, and even if it's just like a friendly, conversation, things like that, it starts off like that. But, like, at some point, and this is one of the things that, like, I had to start really questioning is, like, why am I, like, the person in this situation that, like, somebody would be coming to? And then, like, that's something else that I also had to, like, keep in mind, right? Because it is, I don't know, like, I'm not here to, like, pass judgment on people's relationships, like, don't get me wrong, right? But, like, there's got to be, like, some kind of, like, indication there, right? Of, like, why are you, like, seeking that elsewhere, right? And it's weird because, like, it's something that, like, I had never really, like, put much time into considering before. I just kind of like, I'm an open book with everybody, right? Like, yeah, I don't do small talk. It's usually like straight to, like, whatever, jump straight into the deep end. I don't really entertain frivolous conversation much. Like, it's just, it's not for me. But anytime like I actually like engage somebody in a conversation, it just kind of like naturally gravitates to that level, just mainly because that's where I operate, right? And look, like I'm all good for like trolling and dicking around and like having fun, but I mean, like that only goes so far, like at some point, like when shit gets serious, and like I don't know, for me, like it just seems like it naturally evolves into other things. And like on some level, it's had to like make me raise my own awareness of that, right? Like, okay, well, when am I crossing that line from, like, okay, this is just friendly, communication to, okay, well, like why am I, like now your go-to person, if that makes sense? And
Hmm.
I think like at least for me, personally, like the problem has been like whenever I find myself in these situations with people that are in relationships, it seems to be that they're always like looking elsewhere because whatever they're, like searching for, be that, like emotional intimacy or whatever it is, like they're not finding it where they're at, right? Now, like for me personally, like I know it's pretty obvious, right? Like if I'm in a situation that's not making me happy, then my, go-to solution would be get the fuck out of that situation and, hopefully find something that fits better, right? But like not everybody's like that, right? And at the same time, I mean, I think all humans, on some level, crave some kind of like connection with other people. So like even if things start off like innocently enough, like at some point you have to be aware of like when you're crossing that line and like what your own intentions are, right? Like we've talked about this in the past, right? Like I historically have had that tendency to get involved with people in relationships, and it's never like been my intention, right? Like it's never been like I'm gonna go out and like try to like steal somebody's girlfriend or like whatever the hell like that. But like for some reason it happens, right? So like becoming aware of my own tendencies and how I interact with other people is a good way to like raise my own awareness of where I'm at in a relationship, even if it's like a quote unquote friendship, not like a romantic relationship, but like it's made me more cognizant of my own behaviors, and like I sometimes I'll just have to like step back and question like, okay, well, what are my intentions? Like, is this now becoming something that like basically I didn't sign up for, right? And like I can tell you, I do feel like I've gotten better at it over the years. Like the last time this became like a big issue for me, I mean, it was pretty easy to just say like, look, um, like this has gone somewhere it probably shouldn't have. You need to make a decision on like what you want, and like we'll go from there, right? But it's like you have to be also like for me, it's easy enough to say like I can let go in a situation where something isn't what I want, right? But like whenever you develop like these emotional intimacies and connections with other people, it also gets more complicated because you don't know where they're at or how they're going to like react, right? Now, I've had plenty of situations where people will just like straight up ghost, like and rather than dealing with it. And I like where it used to bother me, now I just kind of like it is what it is, right? Like at some point, like just letting go and like going your separate ways is fine. But like in the past, like I could tell you whenever I would try to like cling to that, because I did definitely have that tendency to like overly attach myself to one person. I think that ties into it too, right? But like when one person is like your only go-to person for like any kind of emotional intimacy or connection or venting, or like basically you make somebody like your own therapist, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah.
It creates an unhealthy relationship dynamic. So
Hmm.
that's one thing that I've personally tried to do is like be more cognizant of where I'm at in these connections and when I think things are going to a different level. And then, like just come out and be like, look, uh, like this is, what I'm picking up here. I don't know if like what your intentions are or anything like that, but just to like put things out in the open. I don't know, for me, like embracing radical honesty, like this was part of it. Like sometimes you just have to be like straight up with people. Like, look, like this seems like we're kind of moving out of the friend space here, and like this situation isn't ideal for that, right? And sometimes,
Mhm.
it's just like, yeah, you're probably right, and we just go our separate ways, or it is what it is, right? But I do think that like getting a higher level of like emotional intelligence and becoming more aware of your own thoughts, feelings, and kind of like picking up through active communication with other people, it's a good way to like make yourself more aware of where things are heading, and also can be a good way to prevent some of those issues.
Yeah, for sure. And look, something that you're talking about there in regards to being the go-to person and that kind of thing. A person who is helping can be seen as a knight in shining armor, right? Regardless of the situation, whether we're talking about like firefighters, they get put up on a pedestal. They run into fires, they run into danger to save people and that kind of thing. And it's the same kind of like concept is um, you know we pedestal people who are assisting us, particularly in our dark times, in times where we're struggling with whatever it is that we're going through. And you know, something else that you touched on there that we need to sort of like assess for ourselves as individuals that are helping other people. It's like, what are you getting out of this? Because some people get a kick out of that feeling of the connection. So, um, say for instance, the situation that you were describing where you were helping someone who was going through a tough time with their relationship. So uh, if you're assisting them for the sole purpose of having that, you want to get that intimacy and you want them to want you, for the lack of better wording, then are you really doing it for the right reasons? Are you trying to help, or are you trying to sort of like satisfy your own wants, needs, and desires by making somebody want you, even though they shouldn't want you because they're in a relationship? It gets very complex. So what it comes back down to is us assessing ourselves, our own moral standpoint, and really being okay and understanding who we are as individuals. Like, what are we doing and why are we doing it? If the purpose is to help others, then that's what it should be about. It shouldn't be, about our own feelings getting involved. So, going back to what we're saying about transference and the psychological standpoint, this is why it's kind of like frowned upon and that kind of thing to date a patient, like as a psychologist, because you set up a power dynamic at the start of that relationship. That is that the psychologist is the one who has all the power, because they're the professional, they're the one who knows all the emotional ins and outs of things. They know all your secrets, and realistically, a psychologist doesn't share their secrets with you. What they do is just reflect back to you, which could be another thing to look into as well, where the people are actually really falling in love with themselves, which they should do. I mean, like, we should all love ourselves, really, before we can love other people. Um, but yeah, that power dynamic is set up in a particular way. So a psychologist dating a patient is actually an abuse of that power. So by the same token, even if we're doing that same thing on a friendship level with people that we know, if we're setting up that power dynamic, we are taking advantage of the person that we're trying to help by utilizing that scenario for our own benefits, our own emotional satisfaction, and that kind of thing. So I think the only real way to counteract this is to become more self-aware, like what you're saying, and be aware of our own moral standpoint. Like, is this really okay? Really think about what it is that you're doing. Right? Don't just do it for the sake of it. Right? Don't be that primal monkey, slapping your butt, running around, throwing your feces at people, and that kind of thing. Really think about what you're doing and if it's really being helpful, or if you're doing it for your own benefits.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why it gets so confusing, right? And like being like who I am and like my own beliefs, like law of attraction does play into it, right? So I do believe that like I attract people that are on a similar frequency. I have learned to like stop assuming, like what these connections or interactions are for, and usually like I just try to look at everything that comes my way as like some kind of lesson, right? Now, is that the healthiest way to look at it? I don't know, especially whenever other people get involved. But I've found that it works for me, right? But at the same time, like outside of a clinical setting, like obviously I'm not like a licensed therapist. People aren't coming to me to like pay money to, like get evaluations and shit like that. But it's not uncommon for me to find people like seeking me out for like either just like need a vending session or like some kind of communication, whatever it is. Even. like it hasn't been happening anywhere near as much lately, and like on some level, I got to be grateful for that. But one of the things is like I used to like regularly get suicidal people that would be like coming to me to like talk for advice and things like that. And yeah, I mean, like I can understand, right? Because like I'm not like afraid to dive into that topic, and like having been there myself, I don't like feel overly judgmental about the topic or anything like that. But at the end of the day, like it is an emotionally draining thing, right? And like on some level, like even if that's like the furthest thing from like romantically, interested or anything like that, like that is an emotional intimacy. Like whenever you'll like share like your shadow basically with other people, like your darkest self, and like you don't want like somebody to like come to you with that kind of stuff and you just be like nah, like I'm not nah, like because at the same time, like right, having been there, like you understand, like how difficult it is for people to open up about some of this stuff, and the fact that people are reaching out at all, I think is a very good indicator that like they're trying to like work through shit. And you definitely don't want to be the person to be like, I don't really have time to deal with you today. Like when somebody's like coming to you, like, look, I've been kind of like on the fence, things aren't going well, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, you can usually tell like when people are like, like leaning in that direction and like kind of like going into darker topics. And I don't know, like for me personally, it's just part of the human experience. Like in all seriousness, I do think that like at some point, all of us like struggle with, like questioning, like what's the point of all this, like coping with suffering, things like that. Like, it's not like I think it's my job, but like at the same time, I do think that sometimes people need help, and people have been there for me in the past, right? So like at the same, like maybe it's just like pay it forward. Like when people need help, they feel comfortable coming to you and like they want to talk. They need that sounding board. To me, I think that's part of the big thing, right? Like don't internalize, don't take anything that they say personally. And for the most part, I tend to look at most of my conversations and interactions with other people as, just almost like from the mirror exercise standpoint, right? Like I think a lot of times the things people say more about them than whatever the hell it is that they're saying. And, like sometimes that's all people need, right? Like they just need some kind of like venting session, right? But especially whenever like relationships get involved in the mix, what I normally find is, and like this has happened several times at this point, and like I said, I've gotten better at like cutting it off way early, but like most of the times to me, it feels like people are basically just like looking for some kind of validation that what they have isn't what they want. And I don't know if they're just like testing the waters elsewhere, like whatever the hell it might be. But at the same time, like I'm also human. I do have like my own desires, wants, needs, things like that. So, I think that that's why it's so important to be aware of like your own self and your own intentions in these situations. Because, if you're wanting something out of this that the other person isn't, like that's a good way to set yourself up to get hurt. And even if like that's not what their intentions are, you want to be like cognizant of what you're doing, like what your interactions are. And at some point, like, do you really want to get emotionally attached to somebody that's basically just looking for somebody to vent to? Do you want to get emotionally attached to somebody that's like already in a relationship? And, like, my rule is like, I just assume that people are like in relationships at this point because, it's happened too many times. But, I do think a lot of times maybe people are just like testing the waters and like seeing, like what else is out there. And it's really weird, right? Because it's not like I go out and like seek those types of situations, but still, like the way that I interact with people, it's very easy to like develop that emotional intimacy and those connections and bonds because like one, I'm not like being overly judgmental. I'll just like I'll listen to whatever you had to say, and like I'm not gonna sit there and tell you what to do or anything like that. I'll share like my thoughts and opinions, like some of my own stories, but like on some level like just doing that, right, like sharing those kind of like conversations and connections with people like builds that emotional intimacy. And one of the things that I've really had to become cognizant of is like, at what point does that become cheating, right? Like, at what point are you looking for emotional intimacy outside of your relationship because you don't have it inside of your relationship? And at what point, like, am I doing a disservice to like you and, like whoever the hell you're involved with if, like I'm filling that void, right? Like, at some point you start feeling like another person, like passively involved in our relationship, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm with you. And something you were talking there in regards to, you seem to find yourself put in the situation where it's the same thing, right? Like if you start getting attracted to someone, they start getting attracted to you. It's generally because they're in a relationship, right? And I think that this kind of like falls into categorizations that we do, and this is something that just happens naturally. Human beings just do it. That's just how we are. Um, Built into our DNA and that kind of thing. But the thing is, like, we attract a certain demographic because we are part of the same or another certain demographic, right? And this is where we find ourselves, quite often. Like you're saying there, the example that you gave is that's when you're attracted to someone, it tends to be that they're in a relationship, and that's why you make that assumption. It's like, oh, if I'm attracted to them, they must be in a relationship, right? But being aware of that is one of the most important things that we can do, because if it's not something that you want to do, something that impacts you negatively, then you can do something about it. But it becomes more important to be aware of that situation, of how it's playing out, to be able to apply interventions to start gravitating towards things that you do want. Because if you don't want to be in that situation where you're essentially having to you know be with people that are with other people, and then they come to you, kind of thing. Well, how are you going to stop that? Because they're not going to stop doing it, and you're not going to stop doing it. It's going to keep happening. So you have to become aware of what's going on, do something about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like my solution now is basically just like when I feel like it's going to that direction, like I'll like lay it out there, be like, look,
Yeah.
like this feels like it's going somewhere else. Like I don't know what your intentions are, but like I feel like we're crossing some kind of line where maybe you might want to figure out like what you're doing here, because like to me it's not an issue. Like I'm not attached to anybody. I don't have any obligations to anyone. It's easy enough to like look at my own, like desires, like what I want out of relationships and things like that. Uh, and even though like I've always been a monogamously minded person, I do find it like really like on some level just like absurdly hilarious that like I can have that mindset, like those intentions and desires, and still always find myself being like the third wheel. But I mean, I do think that like ultimately everybody's responsible for themselves, right? And like that's really the way that like I approach this, right? Like I don't approach this as like telling anybody else what they need to do with their life or like making judgments about their relationships and shit. But like if I feel myself like going to that level, then like I feel like it's kind of like the only right thing to do in that situation is like make it like aware. Like I feel like sitting on and like repressing things like that, like the worst thing I think you can do is sit there and like pretend to be friends with somebody like while you're secretly like wanting something else out of it, right? Because even if like even though it's not fair to them, it's also extremely not fair to yourself, right? Because it's basically like putting yourself in the position to be somebody's second choice, right? I don't think anybody like wakes up in the morning and be like, like, man, I really want to be somebody's second choice today. Like, I really want to be somebody's backup plan. Like I want to be, the person that like puts in the work but like doesn't get anything out of it. Like you gotta like really, like think about like what the actual implications of what you're doing are, right? Now, I say that, and like just to be clear, like I do think it's completely fine to be friends with people, right? But I do think like whenever it's crossing that line, that like you need to make it abundantly clear. Like, okay, well, I think my intentions are maybe no longer what they originally were, and like that's really the only fair thing you can do, right? Like if you're not gonna like sit there and like point it out and like spell it out, then like what are you just gonna like assume the other person will figure it out? But yeah, like to tie back into what I was saying at the start there, like some people really are good at like emotional manipulation and like basically manipulating multiple people into these situations where they basically have a whole bunch of, like ejector seats, right? Like that's what I would consider like your backup plan. Like you're in a relationship for whatever reason, like it's lacking something, right? Like it's not quote unquote the one. So like what they'll do is they'll go around and like set up a bunch of like arbitrary kind of like parallel connections with other people where like they'll develop some level of emotional intimacy without actually going the other way with it. But then, like there's also the other people that will just like straight up like physically cheat without any kind of like emotional attachment. Like this isn't like a judgment thing of like what's better or worse, but I do think it is important to know, like what are my intentions in these situations? Like what am I expecting to get out of this, and like what do I want out of this, right? Because if you're not making like your own needs and desires, like vocalized and aware to the other people involved, then you're basically like putting yourself at the mercy of whatever the hell they decide to do, if that makes sense. And like if that's what you want out of it, right, then like go for it. Like if you just want to like play the field, have a whole bunch of like loose attachments that may turn into something, then do it. But like I do think that like knowing yourself, knowing what you want out of life, knowing like what you want out of your connections and things like that is important to not find yourself in that situation where you're just like constantly being somebody's like backup plan.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think with some of the things we're talking about a bit earlier in that that space there, I think it comes to a point where people put out a certain front about who they are. We put on a mask every day, and we are certain people. Whether we go to work and we've got a very professional way that we interact, but then behind the scenes, once we're not at work, we're party animals and that kind of thing. The way that you interact with your children is different from the way that you interact with your friends. We wear all these different masks, and we're kind of like manipulated by society to make those masks look a certain way. They have to be, we have to present a certain front, and that's what we have to put out there because that's the air quotes, the right thing to do, the good thing to do, what society tells us is the right thing to do. And, the whole thing of, being in open relationships, oh, that's frowned upon. If you're a cheater, that's frowned upon, all these kinds of things. So we try and maintain this sort of like front to show everyone that we're okay and we're normal, right? And the thing is, there's no such thing as normal. There's just the perception of it, the thought of it. But it just made me think of this thing where you were saying radical honesty, like being honest, like when you feel that coming up in a relationship, you kind of like hit the pause button or whatever it is, and you say, hey. We need to sort of like have a discussion about what's going on here and be honest about it, right? But that in itself is seen as a bad thing to do, the wrong. Like, who does it? How dare you? Kind of like stop the game that's happening. You need to play the game. I guess is kind of like the message that gets put across when I do this as well, because I'm pretty sort of like upfront with these things as well. If I sort of like feel something, I'm just going, okay, well, let's just have a conversation about this thing here that we're not really talking about, we're kind of like avoiding. And I get this kind of like adverse reaction, like, wait, hey, hold on, you need to play the game. You're not supposed to. There's no pausing here and breaking character. And it made me think of this section in The Office. I don't know if you're a fan of The Office, but have a bit of a read of that. That was pretty funny when I saw that, and I'm like, well, yeah, look, this is how it is. Breaking character seems to be frowned upon, and you shouldn't do it. So how are we supposed to, have genuine relationships? How are we supposed to have genuine connections if we're constantly hiding ourselves from other people and not being genuine and honest with ourselves and with other people? So it made an interesting thought process, because what I was looking at is that essentially it's humans that makes things difficult. We make it complicated. We make the relationships difficult and complicated because if you're attracted to someone, you can just say, well, hey, like, I like you, and if you like me, blah blah, whatever. You can have that conversation, and it doesn't have to destroy the friendship. It doesn't, like, if it's not reciprocated, you can just go, okay, well, yeah, look, I like you, no problems. great, awesome, but not interested. And then you know where you stand. Like you know what you're supposed to do from there. Like if you want to maintain the relationship as a friendship, great. If you don't see it like rolling forward any further, then you can abandon the relationship and that kind of thing. It'd make things a lot easier. But because the way that humans are, and all the chemicals inside us telling us to do all stupid things, um, we make it more complicated for ourselves. So, like being honest is the best way to do it, but it's also something that is difficult to do because it's not seen as being normal. Like you're looked at as being weird if you're actually an honest human being. So how do we get around that? What's the control alt delete? How do we fix this up? Well, there's not what we can do, is there? That's just society. It's the way that it's built.
Yeah, and it definitely gets complicated, right? Especially like whenever you're aware that you want one thing, and for whatever reason, even if like the indications are to the contrary, like they say that that's not what they want. I think you have to be mindful of that, right? Because how often, like to me, it seems pretty regular that like people will be, like I guess attracted's probably like the right word here, but like they'll want something more from somebody, right? Even if the other person doesn't. And so like they'll hang around, right? Like, well, like maybe they'll change their mind, or like they'll hang on to that connection. And look, like, dude, if you want to keep a connection with somebody, like whatever, right? But like I do think that you have to take my like go-to philosophy on this is like take what people say at face value, right? Like whether they're being honest or not, just like take it at face value and operate like that. Unless like they've given you like clear indications to the contrary that like they're being dishonest or disingenuous with you, and then in that case, like I just like cut it loose, like whatever. I don't fuck with fake shit, right? So like, I mean, like I've had instances in the past where like I'll just be like, look, like I found being direct is like the best approach for my life. So like, I'll just be like, for whatever reason, like I'm okay, so I'm kind of like into you, whatever. Like I don't know if this is this mutual, whatever, and then like we'll go from there, right? Like sometimes people are just like, nah, I'm not interested, or like they'll be in relationships or whatever like that, and it's easy enough for me to just be like, okay, well, like that's fine, and then like at that point, I can then choose, like, okay, well, do I still want to like maintain some kind of connection with this person? Like, do I value them as a friend, and like, can I accept that it will never be more than that? And like in some cases, like it just is what it is, right? Like some people you're just not into on any other level, right? Like it's like some people like you get that like all or nothing kind of connection, and like sure you could sit there and be like all or nothing with somebody that's like very much on nothing, and you can waste like your own emotional energy and your own time and effort instead of like going out and finding what is right for you, like trying to cling to something that doesn't work. And I mean, I think that even applies with people that are like actually already in relationships, right? Like instead of like trying to like form those connections, like there's plenty of examples of people like being in unhealthy relationships and like clinging to them because well, it's better than nothing. It's like, is it? I mean, I guess that's something we all have to figure out for ourselves, right? But I mean, I think you and I have both had our own like mixed bags when it comes to relationships, and yeah, like even now, like I don't hold anything that's like happened in the past like personally. Like I just don't. I mean, I think people are complicated. I think on some level we're all just trying to do the best we can. And like sometimes she gets fucked up, right? Like I don't know how else to put it. Like just like I said earlier, like I don't ever go out there with like some intention of like, yeah, like this person's in a relationship. Let me see if I can break them up, but like it happens, right? And then at the same time, like I said, I do think that like some people are just kind of like going out there, putting fillers out and like seeing, like whatever the situation I'm in isn't working. So like, like do I go poke around and like figure out, like is there something else out there for me? Like I can only assume what the intentions are of why people do this kind of stuff. For me, it's always been very cut and dry, right? Like if I'm in a relationship and it ain't working, and I want to go find something else, like it's over. Right? Like at that moment, that it's like I want to go looking elsewhere because whatever I have isn't working. Like it's already done. Like I'm not gonna like sit there and hang on to it for like sex or convenience or something like that. It just like that's I don't know. I guess like I'm an all in type person. Like either I'm in or I'm out. And I find it really weird that I interact with like so many people that aren't like that. Like I don't know like what am I doing that like attracts that type of person into my life. And like it's gotten a lot better, obviously, like I said. And I mean, I think a lot of that comes with like me being aware of my own intentions, like my own expectations, and also being very direct and honest, right? I think in the past, like part of the problem is like I would kind of like have that tendency to like be the lurker, right? Like waiting for opportunities. And I think that's like a really bad approach, right? Because like that's a great way to like end up like forcing yourself into the friend zone, right? Because like you're sitting there like not making your intentions clear, and you're just like waiting for like some kind of opportunity to pounce. And it's like, is that really like a healthy way to treat other human beings, right? I mean, everybody's going to make their own decisions and do what they want in life, but like for me, it seems disingenuous, right? Like if I want something out of a connection with another person, and they're not on that same page, then like the only honest thing for me to do is to be like, okay, well, like obviously this isn't right, so I'm gonna go, move on along. But a lot of the times like that will cause strife, right? Like especially if you're friends with people. Like at some point, like once it crosses that line, it's hard to like go back to anything else, right? And I think that's why a lot of people that are like in long-term relationships and then break up and try to like remain friends, like it's a messy situation, right? It's like
Mhm.
because you already know like if you're still maintaining that connection, like obviously somebody's probably still harboring some kind of like hope that things are gonna like work out, get back together, shit like that. And the only like honest thing to do is if you're done with it, then just cut the fucking cord, right? Like you don't want to sit there and keep giving somebody like false hope and like leading them on. And yeah, I mean, like there will most likely be like hurt feelings and things like that involved, but like knowing yourself and knowing like what you want out of a situation, like even if it hurts the other person to like vocalize it and then like cut ties, like I think it's the only right thing to do. Sure, like you may end up losing a friend, whatever, but is it really a friend if you're wanting something else out of it? Like to me, like it's yeah, it's kind of like a friend with like disingenuous intentions, if that makes sense. So,
Well,
like that's kind of like been my thought process anyway.
yeah. Well, look, I think it depends on the people. Like a lot of this stuff, there's um, I'm just trying to think of like the best way to frame this, because like even in psychology, we've got sort of like the DSM. We've discussed the DSM multiple times in the past, and it's kind of like a framework, right? But people utilize it as like, no, this is it. This is the science. It's settled. It's settled, right, Julia? The science is not settled, and we use it as kind of like this tool of being like, this is how it is, and this is how it has to be. But what we don't understand, well, for some people, don't understand that it's just a guideline. It kind of like explains things generally, and you have to kind of like customize that to fit the person because everybody's different. They'll present in different ways, and we have to sort of like um, tailor that treatment in a certain way. It's kind of like a means to get you in a ballpark, right? So say for instance you were discussing like the friend zone, and if you go into the friend zone with the hopes of wanting things in the future, then blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, yeah, look, it depends on the person, right? Because the thing is, like, I live in the friend zone. Like, I will not go into a relationship that I haven't been friends with a person for X amount of time first. And it's like I do have some kind of like lines in the sand, I guess you could say. um in regards to like time, like I want to know somebody for at least a couple of months. I want to be able to see what they're like, in their high times, in their down times. I want to see what they're like when they're angry and that kind of thing. And it's not really like I'm sitting there taking notes and being like vigilant with my note keeping, but it's just like I'm generally like having interactions with a person to see if we mesh, if we click, and that kind of thing. So none of my relationships have just been like, oh, I like that booty, let's get up on it, right? Job done. It's more like, hey, how you doing? Like, whether you meet through, you're out somewhere or a friend of a friend or whatever it is, like, the person, and you kind of like, casually interact for a little while, right? And you're like, well, yeah, look, this person's like pretty cool. And then you move on from there. So you move from this, friend zone, and everyone, he's like, oh, once you get in the friend zone, you can never get out. It's like, dude, like all my relationships have been from friend zones, then into relationships, right? So the friend zone is not a bad word. It's not a bad place. And like I said, it's a place where I live. Like I want to go there first. I want to be friends with someone first, and then see where it goes from there. Now, when it comes to the whole, if you express an emotion for someone, you're like, oh, I like you, and they don't like you back, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a world crushing situation. Like, I'm at a point where it's like, just care less, right? It's like, well, I said I like you, right? You don't like me, okay, well, that's no problems. I mean, we can still be friends, blah blah, and you just keep rolling. And it doesn't have, you don't keep pining for the person, and if you keep the wrappers of the food that they eat, like, dude, don't get weird. Don't get weird. You're a friend. They're a friend. That's it. You're friends. Job done. But things can change, and it has happened this way for me as well, where you're friends with someone for X amount of time, and things just don't line up. Like, I'm in a relationship and they're not, and they're in a relationship and I'm not, and it's just backwards and forwards, and eventually stuff lines up, and you're just like, well, yeah, cool. You got together, things aligned, and it worked out, right, for a certain amount of time. But it could have been, the forever the one, if you will. But that's just the way that it played out. So I don't think there's kind of like a specific structure like that where it's kind of like, the friend zone is bad, and blah 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 blah, and these kinds of things. It's just like a general concept of, to be mindful of like these things and understand how they work generally, but tailor them for the individual that you're interacting with, right? So um, then to the final point that I'm making here as well, we choose the people that we interact with. We choose our friends, right? Now, I will probably struggle to find the data, Norm, even though you're not here, for this, but it was somewhere around like 80%, right? So we are genetically designed to be attracted to 80% of the people that we choose to interact with. So you choose your friends, you choose this, you choose that, right? And it doesn't mean that you want to sleep with everyone and that kind of thing, not at all. But what it means is that you find certain traits about this person appealing. Like, that's why you want them in your life, because you like them for some reason, right? Like, that's why you bring them into your life. It doesn't mean that you're going to be sexually attracted to them and you're going to have an affair or whatever it is. But that's just how it is. So, to think that people can't go from friends into relationships and back is ludicrous. Like, we can do it. It depends on the people and how we choose to interact, because there's some people that have like terrible breakups. I'm talking, like, they're smashing each other's shit, they're setting stuff on fire and that kind of stuff, and it's fucking horrible, right? But then there's also people that, they get together, they have their relationship, they have kids, all that kind of stuff. The breakups, like, all nice, all good, and they, co-parent, great. They find partners that are fucking awesome as well, right? So instead of this kid being, single parent raised, they have more parents, they have more influence, they have more love, more affection, and it turns out fucking great, right? So I think it comes down to horses for courses, and it really comes down to how we as human beings interact with these things. But just be aware that the general framework is there. The friend zone is not a bad thing. It exists. If you tell somebody that you like them and they don't like you back, that's great. Don't be a weirdo about it. You can still be friends with them. I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine. Make your choice, right? But it doesn't have to be like, this means this and this is that, and it's written down in the DSM and that's what it means. It's like, no, it's flexible, but it's all up to us.
Yeah, and to tie that in with like what Julia was saying there, I do think that like it's definitely possible, right? Like I'm not sitting here trying to say like you can't like be friends with people you used to bump uglies with or anything like that, right? I do think that like it does require some level of like emotional intelligence on both ends to like still maintain that connection afterwards, right? Like what I'm more talking about is like when you're in that dynamic where like one person's ready for like an amicable break and the other one's not. Like one way or another, right? Like when somebody wants out, like it's gonna go one way or the other. But like I do think that like sometimes that there is that dynamic where like one partner wants out, the other one doesn't, and it's pretty much like impossible to stay friends in that situation, right? Because like you're not on the same page, right? Now, like with what Julia's saying there, like I do think that if you're both, like on that level, you have like the emotional intelligence to accept it, like you grew apart, whatever the hell it is, doesn't mean you have to like harbor ill will towards the other person or any kind of like bad feelings or anything like that, and you can maintain friendships. But that being said, like I think that has to be like a mutual thing, right? Because like if both people aren't in that same place, like you can't sit there and be friends with somebody that's like constantly trying to get in your fucking pants, right? Like unless you want to let them in. But like my point is, I think that depending on where like the people are at, and obviously how you decide to go your separate ways plays pretty large factors into that. Like if it's amicable, just like we, for whatever reason, we're not on that level anymore and just like going our separate ways, getting involved with other people. I think it's a lot easier when both people are like that. But yeah, like from the experiences that you and I have both talked about, like it doesn't sound like they're ever, or at least I know in my experience, they definitely haven't been like mutual, like cutting ties situations. It's usually either me being like, bye, Felicia, or, just getting fucking ghosted. And, like on some level, like it used to really bother me. Like I remember like the first time somebody like ghosted me, right? Like I was, I mean, like we had been like really close for like 4.5, 5 years or something like that. I mean, it was like, like my go-to person, whatever. Uh, and then, like just straight up like fucking poof. Just ghost mode, right? And like yeah, like that fucking like ripped me to shreds, right? But, like obviously in that situation, if somebody's like that into the other person and the other person's like, I'm done with this, like what's the best solution there, right? Like you can't just be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go now and like just constantly have somebody chasing after you for the rest of your life. Like like I get it. Like at some point, like people just have to fucking cut ties. And yeah, I mean, like I think it would be a much easier world and much better to interact with other people if everything like that was mutual. You get to be like, oh, okay, well, I'm not feeling it anymore. Okay, well, like we can be friends and go our separate ways, whatever. But yeah, I mean, like that's going to be a mutual thing, and I think that's the important factor there is if both people aren't on that same page, it's basically like one person's moving on with their life and doing their things and trying to maintain a friendship with somebody that's like constantly just like looking for any opportunity to, quote unquote, get you back. Like that doesn't work.
Yeah, well, look, we've discussed quite a few of our, previous relationship horror stories and that kind of thing, and the thing is, like, they're the ones that stand out. But I've also discussed like some of the good relationships that I've had that obviously we broke up, but like it was good. I don't know, like we're still friends, we still talk to each other. She's got kids and stuff, and there's no like sexual tension or anything there. It just is what it is. It just didn't pan out. Um, and yeah, I definitely agree. It comes down to the individuals and how how we choose to interact with these things and the choices that we make. But being in those situations, like I was saying the rappers thing, and Julia had a bit of a giggle at it. And I'm like, yeah, well, look, someone's done that to me. It was fucking scary. I've also had people camp out the front of my house, leave me presents on my doorstep, and I'm like, dude, like you could have knocked on the door. You could have, like it gets really fucking scary. And this is the thing. I think we kind of like lose ourselves. Um, in the chemical cocktail that is love, and we do stupid shit. And like you've said yourself, like some of the shit that you've done is pretty fucking stupid. Some of the shit that I've done is really fucking stupid. And at that time, like we can look back on it now and go like, yeah, look, that's some dumb shit. I did some dumb shit in the past. I shouldn't have done it. It was fucking dumb. But right there and then, when you were in that situation, that was the air quotes right thing to do, because you were in love and you were making sure that they knew that you loved them and all these kinds of things. But if it's not reciprocated, right, it is fucking scary. It is a scary situation to go through. And like, I'm air quotes a man, right? Fucking scary, right? To have people like walking around your house, looking in your windows, sending you texts about, stuff that's on your kitchen table and that kind of stuff, you start worrying for your safety and the safety of those around you. I was worried for my cat's life, right? Because I'm just like, dude, this chick's gonna break into my house. He's gonna cook my cat, bunny boiler and that kind of thing. I'm like, it's getting to this fucking level. I was honestly considering, getting the police involved in that kind of thing. So this is the extent that the mind can go to, right? To make us feel better about the situation that we're in, to keep us from, we're in denial so deep we just don't want to come out of that zone. And it's the chemicals that keep us there, because that's the way that we're built, right? And acknowledging that is the biggest part, because I think, like, more recently, I guess you could say, because the stuff that I was talking about, when I was doing stupid shit, it was when I was a kid. I was in my teens, maybe early 20s, and that kind of thing. But like now, it's kind of like I feel a certain way, right? Like I can feel my body doing this. My body's kicking in. The biology's doing its thing, and it's kicking in, and I'm just like, all right, this is the feeling that I have now. I know what I need to do when this happens. And I flick my little playbook open, right? And I flip to the page of when I'm being a dickhead, right? And I go, okay, this is where I'm at here. I'm feeling these things. And what I need to do is take a step back and really think about where I'm at, right? And again, it just falls back to that self awareness, self assessment, being able to understand that we have. That we're built in certain ways and we do certain things because that's the way that we're designed biologically. It's just how we are, and we can apply interventions. We have a conscious choice to be able to stop ourselves from taking things to these kinds of levels. From because we're talking about stalking and that kind of thing here. We can stop ourselves from going down this path, Izzy, and do things in a better way to be able to accept things. Because just think about how much better your life would be if you just cared less. Like I said before, you say, okay, well, this is a situation. This person doesn't like me anymore, right? And even though I like them, they don't like me. That's fine, but I can do something else. I can find someone else. I can, whatever it is, to get you out of that zone where you're going crazy with your own emotions, your own feelings.
Yeah. See, and like that's what I'm talking about there, right? Like healthy relationships, it's not like that complicated, right? Like when you're in a healthy relationship and you're not like overly attached and like clinging to another person, it's pretty easy to cut ties on both ends, right? But like in that situation, right? Like where you basically got a chick like stalking you like outside of your house, shit like that. Like this isn't somebody that you're going to be able to maintain a close friendship with, right? I mean,
Well, yeah.
like it doesn't work like that, right? Because like what you guys want and like where you're at in this thing is like so far apart. It's not going to be a healthy dynamic, and I mean like not even just for you, like feeling that it's like a dangerous situation or whatever, but like in an instance like that, like if you're being like, we can stay friends in that situation. I mean, clearly you fucking can't, right? Because like what's gonna happen is like they're constantly like sitting there thinking, okay, well, he still wants to be friends with me. Like we're gonna work through this. It's gonna all work out. We'll get back together. And again, like so much of this comes from like being aware of your like one your own emotional intelligence, but also like your own attachment styles, shit like that. Like you have to understand where you're at with another person, and like so much of this like you can get so much strength from just like learning how to let go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, even if it is something you think you want, right? Like even if you think that this is like the right person for you or whatever it is, you still can't be like so attached to it that you're afraid to let go. Because if you do, then like what's gonna happen is like you'll find yourself being the fucking crazy person in these situations and doing stupid shit that like in any right state of mind wouldn't agree with, right? But it is what it is, right? Like we all have to develop and grow and get to our own places to where we can stop doing dumb shit. But yeah, I mean, again, like I'm not sitting here trying to say like you can't just be friends with people, like you can't just like hook up with people and still be friends with people. You can't like have long-term relationships and then be friends with people. What I'm saying is like if you're not on the same page,
Yeah.
and like this goes like all the way back with like to the start of the conversation, like if you're not on the same page and like being upfront and honest with each other, then you're gonna find yourself in these complicated situations, and you can't have a friendship where like one person has like strong expectations that the other person doesn't, and it be a healthy dynamic. Like it's just not gonna work. Either you're gonna have like the person that's less attached like sitting there just like kind of like keeping the other person as like some kind of like backup option, or like using them to scratch an itch or whatever the hell it is. And you're gonna have the other person that's like constantly like in that pursuit stage, and constantly like thinking, well, things are going to change if I just keep hanging in there. It's an unhealthy relationship dynamic. And
Mhm.
I think that's the really important thing to understand and to be mindful of, right? Like you don't want to mislead people, because that leads to crazy fucking situations, obviously. But also, like one, it's not fair to you, and two, it's definitely not fair to them, right? Like if you have like zero fucking interest in somebody, and like you're sitting there trying to like maintain that connection, knowing that they want something that you don't, Like, one, you're gonna probably put yourself into a situation where you're gonna have to deal with shit that you don't want to. But also, is it really fair to the other person to not just be like fucking cut and dry, be like, nah, like this ain't happening, whatever. And like sometimes like that's what it takes, right? Like you can just lay down the fucking law, be like, look, like it's never gonna go there. Like that's not what I want out of this. Like if you want to be friends, we can try that. But like, and I've been there, right? Like I've been in relationships where like it'll go like in the friend direction, and even if like I'm the one that doesn't want it to be there, it's like try to like maintain that connection, and it's just like it doesn't feel genuine, right? Like if that makes sense, like it doesn't it always feels like either I'm waiting for something that's like basically already been laid out, it's not going to happen, or it's like me like looking for opportunities. It's not a genuine situation. Like it's just it's basically like setting yourself up for disappointment, and also like putting the other person in a really awkward situation. And I mean that goes both
Mhm.
ways. It's not just like a guy thing, it's not just a girl thing. It's like whenever you're pursuing somebody that is not interested in you, then you're setting yourself up for like pain and uncomfortable situations. And I think that that's like that's part of like your own self-awareness, your own emotional intelligence, like being aware of the fact of like when I'm overly attached to somebody that is not attached to me, right? Or
Mhm.
like also just controlling your own attachment levels, right? Like I don't let myself get that attached to anybody anymore because I know where it goes, like especially if it's not mutual. I think mutual attachment can be fine, but like what you don't want to be is dependent on another person to that level, right? Like where, oh my god, if this person leaves, I'm gonna kill myself, right? Like that's not a healthy relationship. And like throwing that in somebody's face when they're like, look, like this isn't working out, I think we got to see other people, whatever. Like, and then you're like, oh my god, if you leave, I'm gonna kill myself. Well, like now you're just emotionally manipulating and abusing the other person and trying to coerce them into staying with you out of like some kind of sense of guilt. Like that's not a healthy relationship dynamic.
Definitely. And yeah, experiencing that firsthand, I can say it's not a nice position to be in, but it's also like, what do you do as an individual in that situation? It can be difficult to, to decide what you do. Like this person said, if you don't stay here, right, with me for, and give you like rules and regulations, terms and conditions of what you need to do, and if you don't adhere to that, they're going to take their lives, and it's all because of you, kind of thing. How do you navigate that situation? Because it a lot of the times it's just like empty threats. But what if it's not? And it's because of you, and you have to live with that for the rest of your life. It's a terrible situation to be in, and it's definitely emotional abuse. Um, but yeah, look, this kind of like dynamic that you get into where it gets to the crazy kind of love, right? But then we have to really ask ourselves, is this really love, right? Because isn't love like caring for someone, like to a point where you care about them more than you care about yourself, kind of thing, right? So that, and not to every extreme, but I'm talking about like feelings, emotions, autonomy, and that kind of thing. So if someone says that they don't want to be with you anymore, and you're trying to force them there, that's a selfish love. Like we need to be able to like recognize that within ourselves. That's not real love. That's us manipulating things to make us feel better, and like using love as a weapon, for the lack of better wording. Um, but it is, again, back down to self awareness and understanding that we are in these situations at the time, because it's really easy to sit here and armchair it, if you will, um, and go like, oh yeah, well blah blah blah, blah, textbook this, and reference that. But when you're in the situation, it's very difficult to see the forest through the trees when you're in it. So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's going to come down to each person individually being able to have that thing that lets them know that they need to take that step back, and assess things, or think about things a little bit more. Um, Maybe if you look into controlling dreams, because apparently there's supposed to be like triggers and stuff that you can use while you're in a dream to let yourself know that you're in a dream, so then you can take control of the dream, kind of thing. There's these means of meditation that you utilize to let yourself know that you're in a dream, and I'm pretty sure that you can utilize the same kind of like rules and regulations to do it like in real life. You just go, okay, well, I'm feeling this, right? I'm doing this. I need to take a step back. I need to recognize that I'm air quotes in a dream, and do something about it. Not just let the dream run wild and go where it wants to. I need to be in control. Um, with that being said, like I briefly said that little bit of a horror story of the previous relationship, but I've also had exes that have gone to like that level of crazy stalking, that kind of thing, and after time, like once those chemicals fade into the nothingness and people go back to being their normal selves, um, you can have like a normal relationship with them. And again, I'm friends with exes that have been like pretty full on during that breakup period and that kind of thing with the stalking and all that kind of stuff. And once it sort of like fades out and they move on, or well, we all move on, and like you reconnect later through your friends of friends or whatever. It's oh yeah, I haven't seen you for a while, and you can have that standard friendship relationship moving on from there. So that's why I keep saying it's just horses for courses. It depends on the person, and the people involved, and how they choose to move forward. Because at the same time, like I could choose to be a dick about it too. As long as both people aren't assholes and genuinely care about the other person. Because that's the other thing we need to question here. Like, if we're going to this extreme, right, do we really care about the other person? Do we really love the other person if we're trying to, manipulate them and hurt them and find ways to, scare them and that kind of thing? Is that really love? Baby, don't hurt me no more.
You know, I think that's part of the problem, right? Like that emotional intimacy can like become almost like an addiction, right? Like you can totally be addicted to another person. If any, I don't know. Like I'm not gonna assume anybody's situations, but like I think most people at some point like go through something like that. But yeah, it's obviously not a healthy relationship dynamic whenever you're like so overly attached to another person that you find yourself like like they're saying no and you're like outside of their fucking windows, like texting them, like that's not a healthy relationship. And like that's usually a good way to I guess probably find yourself, arrested. But to touch on something you were saying there earlier about like is that love? Like in my opinion, and like this is something that like I had to learn over time, right? But man, like if you like really truly like deeply care for someone, right? Like you don't need to possess them, right? Like if you like seriously care about somebody on that level that like I would use the word love, like what you really want is for them to be happy, right? And like sometimes like that isn't with you. Like
Yeah,
that's just one of those things you have to accept.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, like it can hurt, it can be hard, but like at the same time, man, like if what you really want is for that other person to be happy and loved and cared for, then like if they find that with somebody else, then you can be happy for them, right? Like you can have like some kind of gratitude that like somebody you care that deeply for is getting the thing that you wanted for them, even if you're not the person that can give it to them. But yeah, like again, that's something that comes with like a lot of, like self-awareness and, like growing your own emotional intelligence, right? Because so many people confuse possessiveness with love and like obsession with love, but like that's not love, right? Like wanting to own somebody, like, like dude, one thing that like grosses me out more than anything is when people like use the word wife like it's a fucking term of property. And, again, like this isn't like tying in with the fact that like I end up, getting involved with like people in relationships, unfortunately. But like I don't feel like you should ever consider someone else your property, right? And like this is one of the like recurring things I've seen like whenever I start finding myself like getting involved with people that are like for what they're saying and like all intentions seem to point to like looking for, like getting out of a situation. I don't know, like personally, like in hindsight, like it's pretty obvious that like if you're looking to get out of a situation, get the fuck out of it before getting involved with something else. Like that's my, go-to uh belief system now. But like understanding that and like so many times like the possessiveness and like the control factors like these are like big things that like lead them to start like looking elsewhere because whatever they have isn't like working or making them happy. And like I get it, right? Like when somebody just like wants to like control your life, like view you as like a thing and like dictate what you do, what you don't do, like how you're supposed to feel about things, like make all your decisions for you. Like it's not a healthy relationship dynamic, right? Like in a healthy relationship dynamic, both people are allowed to be their own person to like grow and evolve over time. And I think on some level, like depending on your attachment styles and things like that, when people start growing away from you or growing into something that like maybe you don't necessarily recognize exactly as like the person that you started falling for in the first place, it can feel like some kind of attack on yourself, right? Because especially like the more emotionally intimately attached we get with people, the more we kind of like intermingle our identities with them. Like those lines between self and other start getting really blurred, right? And I mean, like if you like look at people that have been in like long-term relationships, right? Like 40, 50 years, it's like there's no questions, right? Like they just like do their own fucking thing, right? Like I can even, like looking at my parents, right? Like they've probably been together like 30 plus years now, I guess. I don't know I'm not good with dates, but right, like they live together, like they cohabitate, shit like that. But like at the same time, they both like do their own fucking thing. Like they're not up each other's ass 24/7. I mean, like some relationships are like that, right? Like some people, like that's all they do. Like they spend every waking moment together. Like they, like whatever. Like it's different attachment styles for different people. And I think the important thing is to like know what works for you. Get involved with people that are, like you, and it works, and to also not like overly cling to and like smother another person, because I think that's what leads to a lot of this like resentment and like this need to go your separate ways, is because you start like getting your own identity so wrapped up in the other person that you don't know who you are without them. And I don't think that's a healthy relationship dynamic.
Exactly. And that kind of like ties back to something you were saying a bit earlier in regards to like these relationships. People just leaving these relationships. Like, it doesn't work, just leave. But the problem is the again, the biological standpoint. Humans don't like change. Like, we kind of like resist it for as long as we can and that kind of thing. And it's mainly for comfort because changing things takes effort, right? To maintain something is pretty simple, but to change it, to do something completely different, that means effort. That means thinking. It means physically moving things around and that kind of thing. And it's kind of like a headache for humans to be in that situation. We tend to like lean towards what's called cognitive ease, where it's kind of like if it's fucking with our brain, we just want the quickest and easiest way out. Path of least resistance, easy. Path of least resistance, and the thing is having that understanding of that's how we work. Again, I go back to hacking the human condition to try and gravitate towards things that you want. Um, and if we can understand it, we can hack it and we can do things differently and go, okay, well, look, I understand that I feel this way. Like, I'm in a shitty relationship or I'm at a shitty workplace or like whatever it is. Um, you know, I want to change, but I don't feel like I want to do the things to make the change happen and that kind of thing. You know, understand that that's a human condition thing. You can hack it, you can change it. But being aware of it is the first thing that we need to do. So I've got a little thing I'm going to put here in the chat space, which kind of like, I think it kind of like wraps up where I'm at in regards to this thing. Like the thing is like the whole human biology side of things is really old. Like we are really old fucking hardware, right? And when it comes to changing things and doing things differently, like we're running on the 2021 or whatever year it is, when people refer to this kind of thing. That's where the software is from. So the thing is like trying to understand that the old hardware is built in a certain way and has to work in a certain way. We can create the software to make the hardware work in a particular way that we want to, but it's not easy, right? We're talking monkeys that don't think that we're talking monkeys, right? And somehow we kind of like convince ourselves that we're separate from everything else, that we are different, and our love is different. Oh, my love is different. It's not the same as everyone else's. It's TV movie like. No, it's not. That's the way that you're built. You're built to do that because the sensation of love, is just a bunch of chemicals that's supposed to be there to make us reproduce, right? And this is why we have a lot of infidelity, people cheating, and these kinds of things, right? So if we can understand that, we can hack it, but we have to admit that that's what it is. And a lot of people don't want to, because we want to think that God made us as this dude in the cloud, and blah, blah, all these kinds of things, and we're special, we're God's special creatures, and these kinds of things. And again, like, I'm not trying to be offensive, but like, if we put that aside and go, okay, there could be a God. I'm not saying there's no God, right? But what I'm getting at is, like, we're built in a certain way, and even if there is a God, right, and we accept that fact, right? God built us this way, right? So whichever way you want to point at this, it leads back to the same path, Izzy, right? That we are built this way, and the only way to get around it is to understand it and do something about it, not just continue playing the game, because it's not gonna pan out the way that we want it to, right? We're just
Co-
talking monkeys.
Cope, just to clarify, are you allowed to say what Sky Daddy designed us to do? Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
the
Normog's
the
not here to be the authoritative voice, so I just want to make sure we're not overstepping our bounds.
well, the proof is in the pudding. This is a thing. Like, if you strip something down, if you dissect a thing and it's built a certain way, right? Whether it was God, whether it was evolution, doesn't matter what you believe in. It is built that way. Now, we can argue till the cows come home over who's right and who's wrong in regards to the science and religion, spirituality, and that kind of thing. But the fact remains that we are built in this particular way. So, we can do something about that, because there's things that we can influence, things that we can change, and things that we can't change. We can't change if there's a God or not. We can't change if the science is right or wrong or settled, Julia. All we can do is understand it and utilize that knowledge to to gravitate towards the kind of existence that we want to have while we're here, because we don't have a lot of time here, man. Make the best of it.
You know, just to like throw a complete monkey wrench in the entire topic. You know,
Monkey, how
I,
dare you?
I do often wonder, like, and like if you ever just like look at animals, right? Like look at all the animals you've ever seen, right? Like look at how animals operate. Um, again, like I don't want to like put the human lens on this and like assume what consciousness looks like in other beings, right? I think that, like, we talked about this before. I think there's plenty of animals that like give some kind of indication that there's awareness there, right? Like especially with like dogs, cats, like there's a level of intelligence and like perception, things like that there, right? I do think like one of the most, for lack of a better word here, like the most like tragic parts of being a human is that like we are so stuck in that human lens that like we look at other beings and we think that like we're the only thing that has consciousness, right? But like I don't know how much of that is just like our own, like our own perception of like what we think consciousness is and how we deal with it, right? But like it definitely makes me curious, right? Like we've gone through and like deep dived into a lot of these topics about like stone ape theory and shit like that, of like where consciousness originates. Yeah, it just like makes me really curious, right? Like, what do you think this planet would be like without human beings having like that level of consciousness and that like mindset and perspective that like we're the hot shit on this planet, right? Like we're the the apex predator. We're the ones that are gonna like build and like evolve and change this world. Like, dude, just you ever just like wonder like what this planet would look like if humans weren't like that? Like what if?
Yeah.
Because I mean, like even if you look at other animals, right? Like look at dogs, cats. Like how many of them are the way that they are because we've cultivated them and like shaped them into that over the years, right? Like maybe like they just had enough intelligence to like go about their lives, but like over time human beings have like influenced them and like molded them and like turned them into something else. And like we've basically projected a lot of our own ideals onto them and like made them what they are, right? Like dogs in nature would never just be like your fucking lap dog, like waiting for pets and begging for treats. Like they'd be out there hunting and like living their lives and shit like that, right? I mean, like you guys still got some of them, some of those dingoes and shit over there in Australia, and I mean, like you go to Africa, like they still have jackals and shit. Like you can see like what happens when like animals that have not been like manipulated and cultivated by man, like it's a very different story, right? Like, what do you think men would be like, like human beings? What do you think we would be like without that consciousness? And it's an interesting
Monkeys,
wormhole. I
monkeys,
really do
simple.
think we would be, right? Now,
Yeah.
like maybe we would like when I say like we would like build shelter and stuff like that, I mean like, it's not like you can look at other animals and see like nesting behaviors, things like that. Like I don't think it's hard to imagine that like a non-aware, non-consciousness infused human being would like still be able to like make like lean-to something like that, like build some kind of like primitive shelters, without any great sense of reflection and things like that. And like on some level, like I just gotta wonder, like how much has consciousness like overcomplicated our existence?
Well, I think it comes down to something we've discussed many times in the past is like the tool is the tool, right? A hammer's a hammer, right? It is what it is. It's not good or bad. It just depends on how you use it. You can use it to build something. You can use it to cave someone's head in, right? And I think it's the same thing with consciousness. It's just that we've kind of like given this consciousness a pedestal so high, um, that we can't sort of like argue against it, and it's the ultimate and we're special because we have it, and these kinds of things. Well, there's a lot to be debated there, but this is kind of like the perspective that we have of consciousness, but it's just a tool, and the way that we use it is up to us, and we can create or we can destroy with it. And I think more often than not we use it to destroy. You know Thinking of what we would be like as maybe less conscious beings would be a way to put it. You know, I look at animals and how they operate, and I'm like, well, you don't see, a pride of lions getting together and going, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to kill all of the gazelle, every single one of them, right? And we're going to eat maybe like 15 or 20% of them, and that's it. Like we've just, complete extinction for the sake of it. We've wasted a whole bunch of, meat and that kind of thing, because that's what we do. Like we're kind of like a cancer on the planet. We don't really think about what we're doing into the future. And again, I don't really think that lions would go like, "Oh, well, we have to make sure we only eat a certain amount. That way, the gazelle don't die out." But they're just taking what they need, and I think that's the way that we're utilizing consciousness right now. In the air quotes wrong way, is to we want it all. We want to take it all. Every single fucking drop that we can squeeze out of this thing, we're gonna fucking do it, and we don't need to. Right? There's no need for us to do it. We do it for the sake of ego. To have the mantle, the trophy on the mantle, going like, yeah, look, I did this. This is fantastic. And it's like, dude, why? Why do you need to do that? You don't need to do that. Take what you need and leave the rest, right? I think that's the problem that we have with consciousness is the way that we're using it, not the fact that we have it in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, right? Like, especially like going back with the lion example there, right? They don't have to think about that, right? Because like naturally, that's just how it works. They go out, they hunt, they eat, and then they're satisfied, right? With
Yeah.
humans, it's like we've lost that like sense of enough, right? It's like we're always like looking for more. It's like that perpetual pursuit of like what else can we do? Like how else can I manipulate this 3D sphere hurtling through space to bend it to my will instead of like just existing, peacefully doing our thing and utilizing the resources that are available, right? I mean, like, I think if you look throughout human history, like, one thing that's pretty abundantly clear is that the world we're on is enough, right? Like, we don't need to, like, look, I'm not saying, like, want to here, right? Like, I'm saying, like, we don't have any, like, hard need to, like, do something like go and colonize Mars or try to, like, terraform Venus and, like, build, sky clouds and shit and the atmosphere of Venus to like colonize other planets. Like we don't have this like hard need, but like we're driving ourselves there, right? Like we're intentionally just like consuming more resources than we ever needed to. And a lot of times it's for shit that we just like don't even need, right? And I think that that's like the weirdest thing where I start to wonder like is consciousness like really a benefit or are we doing more harm with it than good? And I think that like on some level, just like looking at the way humanity operates, I think there's just like such a large percentage that don't necessarily even like actually use consciousness for anything productive, right? Like to like put this in like almost like a caste system type mentality, right? Like you can look throughout history, like there's always been, like the thinkers, there's always been like the followers, the doers, and like leaders, and I feel like we tend to like fall into these types of individuals, and for whatever reason, there's always going to be fewer leaders and a lot more followers, just because like logically, if everybody was a leader, we'd all be doing different shit, right? But yeah, like especially looking at the way our public indoctrination camps, aka schools, work, that's what they do. Like they teach you to be a follower, right? Like they teach you to be the cog in the machine, do what you're told. But like if you ever like keep like peeling back the layers, like why, like being a good scientist, always asking why, like you gotta wonder, like where's the top, right? Like where, why is it this way, right? Like why do we need so many people just being like a useless cog in the machine, for lack of a better word, and so few people deciding the direction that this ship is headed? And like you gotta like also ask yourself, like, do I agree with the direction this ship's headed? And, I mean, I think over the like the course of this show, if you've been tuning in, I think you'd be pretty clear that Cope and I aren't necessarily like the happiest with the direction that society is going, and we'd like to see things done differently, right? But again, like how do you even do that when like most people don't even really like have the level of self-awareness to question like why they're doing the things they're doing, like what their end goals are. Like they just follow the instructions, right? Like they just do what they're told. They go and work the jobs to buy shit that they probably don't really need or care about, just to like have something to say, right? Like human motivation is such a weird fucking wormhole.
Well, yes, because what drives us is different for the individual. And even though we may seem like we're working towards the same goal, walking down the same path as you, there's differences in motivations and end goals and that kind of thing. Like we may walk the same path, but our destinations may be completely different. And it really comes down to the individual, and that's the complexity, right? That's the difficulty in who you choose to align yourself with and what you choose to do in your life, and that kind of thing is looking around and going, okay, well, am I with the right group? Am I in the right crowd? And that kind of thing. Or should I just not be with the crowd at all? Right? Should I separate from them completely and do my own thing? And this is something we can only answer ourselves.
Yeah, I think Nine's right there, right? Like I try not to get like too hung up on other people for that very reason. Like it just like makes me miserable, especially whenever I'm like, how can you not see? Like we're living 1984 right now, and the scary thing is like how many people we have like begging for it, right? Like subjugate me more, Sky Daddy or whatever. But I mean, like it's a really weird like world that we find ourselves in, right? Like how are like self-aware people that can like see some of the problems and the logical fallacies and shit that humanity is falling into, like we can verbalize, we can share our ideas, we can point out like different approaches and things like that. But again, like you get into Plato's allegory of the cave, you can't like make somebody see something that they don't want to see. You can't make them hear your ideas if they're not like feeling it. I mean, again, like this is something we've broached on before, but like understanding that like you are on some level the exception, because most people are fine with just the complacency of just like being the cog in the machine and doing the thing and like chasing the stuff and spending what like most of their life just like working for money and shit that like you don't really need and care about, but like it's what you were taught to do, it's what you were told you need to do, like this is your signs of success. If you're not doing this, then you're not doing it right. So it's like whenever you can train the general populace to think and operate that way, it makes it really difficult to do something different, because like while our options are basically, like go live in the woods and basically try to ignore society, or to just operate inside of society and accept that like you're gonna have a very small tribe, right? Because the vast majority of society just isn't on this level, right? And as much as you could wish it otherwise, you can't make it be otherwise without subjugating people's will. And
Yeah.
that's not the goal, right? Because and I think that that's like the biggest hurdle there, right? Is because like whenever you get to that point that you can accept these things and see it this way, you also had that same mentality that like it's not my place to impose my will and my autonomy on other people, right? So like if
Mm.
people want to choose to be that cog in the machine, they want to do what they're told. They want to like go spend, 50, 60 hours a week slaving away for some shit that like ultimately doesn't even matter. Like who am I and like where is my place to like sit there and tell them that they're doing something they shouldn't be doing? All right, like I know it doesn't work for me. I know it doesn't make me happy, but how can I sit there and tell you that like what you're doing is wrong and it doesn't make you happy? Like that's for you to
Mm.
figure out. And like again, like all I've been able to figure out how to do is just share my own philosophy, which is what I've been doing for years now. And like
Mm.
it seems like people kind of like come and go. Some radiate with it, some don't. Yeah, I just try not to take any of it personally, man. Like we've all got our own experience, our own path, our own journey here on this fucking marble hurtling through the universe. And yeah, like it just sometimes it feels like the path gets pretty lonely. But I
Hmm.
mean, it
Well,
is
look,
what it is, right?
yeah. Well, I gotta say that the whole marble Earth thing. How dare you? You've offended a whole bunch of flat earthers everywhere with that. But look what.
I'm sorry, the frisbee hurtling through the turtle's back or whatever the fuck.
That's it. But yeah, look, what you're talking about there, I kind of like relate that to like there's like people that are like heavily religious and they're like they're trying to save you, right, by getting you to convert to their religion and believe what they believe and be another pawn in their game, right? Because apparently like if you convert people, you get a lot of brownie points when you get to heaven, and you get access to the chocolate milk fountain earlier or some shit. I don't fucking know. But the thing that I keep saying is like you're okay. Let's say you believe that there is a God and that God has influence on the people of Earth and blah blah blah, these kinds of things. So God has set a path for me, Izzy, that I'm walking down, and maybe that path means that I have to stray from God to find God, to return to God, right? But it's been designed by God, right? So why the fuck are you intervening with God's path, you asshole, right? You're kicking your own God in the nuts by doing so. And I think that it's the same mentality that we need to bring when it comes to these kinds of things as well, where just because we see things a certain way doesn't mean that we have to try and convert other people to seeing things our way, and all of that kind of manipulation, that kind of thing. It just is what it is, and we're all allowed to have our opinions and our thoughts, feelings when it comes to spirituality, the beyond, that kind of thing. And it also, when it comes to what we believe in as far as what we should be doing as human beings. The directions we need to take, etc. And realistically, life is more about the journey than it is the destination, because the destination is the same for all of us. We're all fucking dying, right? We're all gonna die. So it's about the journey, right? What we choose to do while we're alive, and the outcomes of those choices that we make along the way. And it's not really up to anybody else to intervene, because we have to go through what we go through. So if you're saying that these people, they're not woke enough and they're not seeing through the bullshit and blah blah blah, blah, and they haven't read the right books, okay, well they have to read the right books, right? And you can have a discussion with them about it, but you can't grab the back of their head and force them to read that book. You're gonna watch this fucking movie, motherfucker. Like, you can't do it. They have to do it on their own. It has to be free will. Because something that I've learned and seen happen many a time is you can't convince people of shit, right? They convince themselves. Even if you make a fantastic fucking argument, right? You present a whole bunch of good data, Normark, even though you're not here, and you do everything right and you put it all in front of them. If they are not open to taking that information, if they're not receptive, it doesn't matter what you put in front of them. You can show them exactly what's going on. They're just not going to see it, right? They're just going to be blind to the whole thing because they have to find it themselves. They have to see it for themselves. They have to believe it themselves. And you trying to force feed them is probably going to make them dig their heels in even more and resist for longer, right? I think the best thing that we can do is, what you're saying there is just you just express yourself, and it just is what it is. Care less, right? Don't get so wrapped up. Oh, they don't believe the right thing, and don't get emotional. This is what I believe. If you believe it, great. If you don't, no problems, right? You want to get into an argument? I'm not interested in an argument, right? We can sort of debate the details and that kind of thing, but it's all in good fun, right? Don't get wrapped up in the emotions of it and just let it play out. Because realistically, what I believe is that we are at a point where there's nothing we can do. We just need to let go of the reins and let this thing shake itself out, right? Whatever comes loose comes loose, whatever sticks sticks, and it is what it is. But stop trying to control everything and just control what you can. You, your feelings, your emotions, what you do, because that's what matters.
Man, if there was like one thing that like I could do, like a window to the past, like look at any point in history and just try to figure out what was going on. I think what I would really love to do is go back to when, like through whatever step of evolution, consciousness started manifesting itself, and like imagine, just imagine that, right? Like imagine, like the first like hairy ass cavemen type motherfuckers or whatever out there, like mostly behaving like animals, and then like slowly like that self-awareness and consciousness starts to kind of like pop up, and I mean like you gotta imagine at one point, like at one point, like unless you're just like a hardcore creationist, like there had to be like that one human or human predecessor that started to really like develop a level of like self-awareness and consciousness. And dude, like that had to be, like the most isolated motherfucker in the world, right? Like just imagine that, and I mean I think we can even draw parallels today, right? I mean like how many times before have you ever like sat there and felt like, I'm the only one in the world, before you like really get that like sense of like self and, oneness and connection with the universe. I mean, like that. Just imagine that, like being the one fucking monkey that is like sitting there, like capable of like higher thinking and consciousness, and you're like looking at everyone else, and you're just like, like I'm that one that like doesn't fit, and then like over time, like more of them start popping up, obviously. Like man, like that would have had to been like a really fucking interesting time to be alive, or like, I mean, I think it would be depressing as fuck to be like that first motherfucker to like, really like gain that consciousness and awareness. But man, at the same time, like, how fucking fascinating would it be, right? Like,
Mm.
imagine you're intelligent enough to like realize that you're different, but like have no way to, like communicate it with the other beings, right? And I mean, like on some level, like I often wonder about that with, like nonverbal autistics and things like that. Like what if that really is like one of the next evolutions of humanity, and like they're in a similar situation, right? Like there are some incredibly intelligent autistic people that are like nonverbal, like can't really communicate well with other human beings. Like, I mean, I can't help but like draw some kind of parallel, right? Like imagine that first fucking monkey, right? He's like sitting there talking about like, like I could sharpen this stick, it'd make me a lot better at hunting. Like I can start like, putting some, like some sort of like rudimentary shelter together and all this kind of stuff. And like you're looking around and realizing like you're the only person thinking like this and doing these kind of things. You're like you've got to be the weirdest motherfucking monkey in the world, right? Like everybody else is probably looking at you like like want to fucking hit you with a stick or some shit. Like what's wrong with this one? But at the same time, like you're the next step, right? Like you're the thing that they're becoming. And yeah, I mean, like, just imagine, like, at some point in the future, like, what if we're the fucking dumb monkeys and, like, whatever comes next is just, like, that far ahead of us that, like, we wouldn't even be able to, like, recognize it or understand it? It's pretty
oh, oh,
mind-boggling, isn't it?
oh, yeah. Look, and the thing, there's no doubt about it. We are dumb monkeys. I say it all the time. Like, even everything we've been discussing tonight, right? Like I said, we can discuss it here, but when we're out in the field, like we know better, but we still do the dumb shit, right? Same with like addiction, smoking, that kind of thing. Like it's bad for you, but you do it anyway. Fuck it, right? Because I'm a dumb monkey. But going back to what you were saying there in regards to the consciousness and the aware monkey and that kind of thing, my perception of that would be that it's more of like a slow progression anyway. So there wouldn't be like one that's miles ahead of the rest and that kind of thing. It'd be like it's a slow growth, right, of consciousness and intelligence over time. So when we look at the whole, we'd go like, well, yeah, like they're all pretty much the same. And we can look at, say, for instance, if we thought about, who was the smartest man on earth, and people always go to, Einstein. Ask Einstein, he says, I don't know, ask Tesla. But anyway, the whole thing with that is that there may be those that stand out a little bit, and we look at them and we see them as being eccentric and weird and like all these things, but like they, at the end of the day, they end up being more free because they're not like everyone else, but they're still like everyone else. You know what I mean? So I don't see it's like a huge jump. So I wouldn't see it as, all the other monkeys are still sitting there going, ooh, ooh, and this one's like, well, let's just think about Shakespeare and stuff like that. So, it'd be more like closer than further apart, I think, and it'd be pretty indistinguishable for let's just say like another speed, like an alien flies by, has a look on the planet. He doesn't go, look, there's the Einstein monkey down there. He knows what's going on. Be like, it's a bunch of monkeys, right? That's it, bunch of monkeys.
Yeah, what a fucking ego trip, right? like, man, I'm surrounded by all these fucking dumb monkeys. But and like that fucking bird that Nine like summoned or whatever up there. Like, don't you guys have those motherfuckers on Death Island?
I don't know,
Like,
maybe we got a lot of
that's
shit here.
a full on fucking dinosaur looking motherfucker. I know you guys got emus and shit down there, but like, don't you guys like have cassowaries or whatever the hell they're called?
Yeah, cassowaries. They're apparently descendant from the Velociraptor. Similarly coloured and that kind of thing. But yeah, they're pretty aggressive. They got the plate on the head and they'll ram you with it. Which raptors are known for having that, and the massive claw as well, so they can gut you, as they like to say in Australia. And it's pretty
Yeah,
full on stuff. If you Does it kill people? Yes, Izzy, it does. It
yeah,
can. I mean, if you don't run away from it, climb trees, like you're like, if you just sit there and go like, oh, there's a bird coming at me, and you just sit there, it will sort of like leap at you and use both of its back paws, if you will, Izzy, and give you a good slash. And if it gets you good.
yeah. Those cassowaries. I I had like this Aussie chick that I was friends with for a while, and like I always like would laugh because like she was like terrified of birds, and I'd just be like, what the fuck, right? Like birds. And then like she started explaining like like when I was younger like they went to like some kind of like a cassowary farm or sanctuary or some shit, and like watching those motherfuckers like attack somebody, I'd be like shit, like yeah, cassowaries ain't no joke. Like there's some big badass motherfuckers, and they can totally fucking gut you.
Yeah, take a look at this one, Izzy. This apparently was a dude. I think he's in Florida, right? And he had one of these cassowaries because you can bring exotic animals in certain areas, and he was killed by it. Take a look at his back paws there, Izzy.
Yeah, like they're literally like modern day velociraptors. I don't know how else to put it. But yeah, we're at the ass end of the show. I'm assuming Moon fell asleep. I'm expecting your word, Moon. If you're awake, you gotta tell us what your cope word is. But yeah, I don't know, guys. It's been fun. If you never see me again, much love, shamalama ding dongs, and all that shit. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Uh, you know,
Hmm.
smoke a fucking doobie or something and pour one out. I don't give a fuck. I'll be gone. I won't be worried about it. But we'll see where she goes. I've been through plenty of these things. I don't really sweat them, but I don't rule out anything. And
Hmm.
yeah, like this one's looking pretty fucking bad. So we'll see how she goes. To me, like the most annoying thing is I'm thinking, uh, like we've had this situation before. Like even one of the ones that wasn't this bad, that came through before, like it still knocked out everything for like 10, 11 days. It was pretty rough, but this one's like basically looking like it's going to be a local Katrina. Yeah, so
Mhm.
you know, we'll see how it goes. You know, like I don't really stress these things for like one big reason. Like throughout like my life, like we've been hit by several of them, but like they also do have this tendency of like, you know, like we say that as Zarya, but like for all we know, that thing could like fucking juke left and hit you guys, or that thing could like juke right and like wipe out Mississippi. Like it's just like they're so unpredictable, and even though everything is like, you know, saying like it's coming right at you, I'm just like, you know, it is what it is, and you know, like I'm not afraid to die, you know, so like I'll ride it out, but we'll see where she goes. Fuck. Oh,
Sliver. Gonna get to the
we lost our
demographic.
weird noises.
Ah, damn.
Damn. Well, fuck. We'll just have to hop in audience and make weird noise.
All right.
You guys didn't think we were gonna like leave without you getting weird noises, did you? We almost forgot. We almost forgot. You know, we started talking. Okay, so weird noises, and
Mm-hmm.
then you know
But
I'm
hold
gonna.
on. I've got to chuck in a good clean sliver for 9 because she asked for it. And she got it. I'll give you 2 sliver. Right.
Ooh.
Job done. Anything else? Anybody else want anything covered? And Moon, you know, if you haven't thought of a word, you know, it's all
Pass.
right. Take your time. You can choose a number of different words. Take your time. You know, when you're ready, let me know.
I'm sure several people are asleep, but okay, weird noises, and then I'm going get ready for Hurricane Land. So.
All good, man. Stay safe, man. Cassowary.